It's 2023 and there's some big changes happening in the real estate market this year. Some exciting things to look out for, especially if you've been on the fence about buying a house. So make sure you stay to the very end of the video so you can best game plan for yourself so you can be successful with your real estate purchases in 2023. We've all seen interest rates rise significantly around June, July of 2022. It basically put a halt on home buying altogether. I remember even looking at the numbers for my own branch. We had a lot of people just suddenly have no business at all. And it was like someone turned the switch off as far as home buyers go. But I think now that we're rolling into the new year, we've seen a lot more people come off the fence. And I think a lot of buyers that would have purchased a home last year that decided to wait, I think everyone's starting to realize that now the 6 and 7% range is something that they're going to see maybe for the foreseeable future. However, there are some predictions that rates will get better towards the end of the year, which I'll get into later in the video. But a lot of people over the last couple of weeks have been reaching out to myself, to my team, and they've been looking at purchasing homes. I've had some people that wanted to do some cash out refinances so they could buy investment properties. So I think that now we've kind of seen this norm for the last 6 or 7 months. I think a lot of buyers are getting used to seeing rates at 6 and 7%. Now, some of you are still not happy about that, but I can start to feel the activity picking up, not only in my office, but with some of my other partners across the country. So even though you might have seen some of these articles from some major publications, they're really talking about how home sales are starting to pull back. This is something I've said in other videos that from a national standpoint, yes, that's sort of the prediction. However, in certain markets, things are actually picking up. So if you're thinking about relocating to another part of the country, or you're thinking of buying somewhere where you're just not familiar with the inventory, you need to make sure that you're speaking to a local lender or a local real estate professional. So that way you can at least get the most up-to-date data. Now, even if your lender's not there, they might be doing business in other parts of the country, but they still have a really good understanding of the dynamics of that market. There's been a lot of talks about markets in the South and even parts of the Northeast are actually going to go up in value, despite many news articles talking about that this year they're predicting a flat market. So even though that you might be thinking there's going to be this massive crash coming, or maybe that there's going to be this huge pullback as far as values go, you might be surprised that in certain parts of the country, it may not be as bad as what the media is trying to portray. So make sure you do your homework and make sure you figure out what your market is doing before you start to jump to conclusions based on old or inaccurate data. Now, this is the big news that everyone's looking out for. The prediction that interest rates are going to pull back towards the ending part of the year. There's some people that have picked a magical date. I think there's some people in my office that have said that around May 10th is when certain experts have predicted interest rates to start coming back down into the 5s. I don't know if I'm 100% on board with something that crazy. But towards the end of the year, yeah, I think we could see interest rates get a touch better than what we're seeing right now. Obviously, there's ways to get lower rates today. You can look at a 2-1 buy down, or you can look at even just doing a permanent buy down. And the market that we're in right now, the sellers are willing to offer credits and they're willing to pay for things that they weren't willing to do in the last several years. So it's not to say that you can get that rate today. You can certainly get it. However, it just might be a little more expensive, but if the seller's willing to pay for it, it may not have to come out of your pocket in order to get the rate there. This is why I always stress that the best strategy will always win, because any loan officer out there can always just give you the lowest rate because all they're going to do is charge you the most amount of money for it. However, the best strategy where the combination of the two of getting a low rate, but also maybe not having to come out of pocket with a ton of money could be a better way about going buying a house today. Because everyone that bought over the last 6 to 7 months that have a rate in 6 to 7%, the minute interest rates drop, they're going to be looking at refinancing. And any good loan officer out there will keep such a good close eye on their database that they will be calling you to refinance your loan. I mean, it's literally going to happen overnight. However, the thing you have to remember is that in order to refinance, you still have to qualify for that loan. So there is no guarantee that just because interest rates come down, you will be able to refinance. And I know a lot of people have been making that statement that date the rate, marry the house. Well, you still got to qualify to do the loan down the road. If your loan to value is not in place, you probably might not qualify to refinance. And if you went out and bought a car After you purchase your home, now your debt to income ratio is higher than what it was when you bought your house. You may not be able to qualify. So there's a lot of things that can come up, and we started to see more and more companies start laying off their employees. That could also be a problem, because let's say you got laid off and now you got a new job, but you're not making as much money. Again, your DTI may be too high and now you can't qualify. So there's a lot of moving parts that go into making this work in the future. So if your loan officer is trying to sell you on this idea of, hey, just get into the house today and we'll refi you down the road, remember, you've got to ask those questions like, what do I need to do in 6 months, in 8 months, in 10 months, whenever that time is to refinance? What do I need to look like profile-wise as far as your credit, income, and debt and everything else in order to make that work? Because if you go in with the assumption that just because rates come down, that you're going to be able to refi, you could be waking up to some bad news when your loan officer tells you that you don't qualify. So even though with all these predictions of interest rates getting better at the end of the year sound great, it could also pose a really big problem for a lot of you that are sitting on the fence. Because again, you're not the only one that's sitting on the sidelines. There are hundreds, if not thousands of people that are wanting to buy houses, and psychologically, all they care about is I want a lower interest rate. So I need you to just even think about that for yourself. How many friends and how many family members and coworkers do you know that want to buy a house that haven't done it yet? Now multiply that by the rest of the country, multiply that by how many people are in your town. That's how competitive the market is going to be. And let's not even forget about the investors that are out there that, you know what, we'd all love to see a 5%, a high 4% interest rate, because that's going to help our cash flow out and it's going to bring back more investors into the marketplace. So a lower interest rate might, again, sound really, really good on the surface, but it's, in my opinion, it's going to cause a lot of stress for a lot of people, because investors will get back to the marketplace even heavier than what they are today. And also every home buyer that was so rate sensitive is going to also get back into the game, which is going to cause a lot of problems because there's just not a lot of inventory out there. I keep saying this in all my videos. There's just not a lot of supply. You can even look this stuff up. There's hedge fund managers, there's Wall Street investors that are saying this over and over, that we are underdeveloped, underbuilt housing-wise as an entire country. So if you don't have enough houses to meet the demand, how can values continue to go down? The only way that happens is if we have to have more inventory. Builders are not going to shoot themselves in the foot. There's no reason, there's no benefit to them to flood the market with more homes if they can constrict the supply. And you as a home buyer, if there's 10 of you that want to buy the one house, they can charge whatever they want for the property. And you guys will wait in line. You will make an offer just like we saw during COVID. And the banks are not going to make the same mistake like they did during the foreclosure crisis, because again, they learned their lesson. And to me, the proof is in the pudding. They had every opportunity to kick people out of their houses when COVID happened, but they did it. They offered forbearances because they knew if they went and flooded the market with foreclosures and a ton of inventory, they would have done the same thing. There would have been more homes on the market, which would have affected the value of the properties. But again, the banks constricted the inventory. People that potentially would have went into foreclosure didn't go into foreclosure. They were able to stay in their homes. And then interest rates went down to the twos, which was the worst thing that we all saw. Even though so many of us took advantage of that opportunity, it only made things worse, because fast forward from where the market was during COVID and where it is today, every potential home seller that would have normally sold their house has no incentive to do it unless they're absolutely in a position to do it for whatever reason. I have a client that's selling their house because one of their parents passed away. So now the house is going into probate and now they need to sell the property. And there's all these other things that are coming up, like divorces or people losing their jobs and now they have to sell. But for the vast majority of people that are out there, they either own their home without a mortgage or they have a really low interest rate. And there's no incentive for someone to lose a 2 or 3% interest rate to take a 6 or 7% interest rate. So again, all of those people that would have normally sold their houses don't need to sell right now, which again constricts the inventory and makes it a lot tougher for you as the average buyer to come out there and purchase a home. So keep an eye on interest rates. Yes, it would be amazing to see 5% again. Trust me, I would love that. But at the same time, I think it's going to give a lot of people a lot of headaches. Now, as we talk about inventory, here's some big news to really think about. So according to the National Association of Realtors, there is about 3.3 months of existing homes available for sale across the country. So when you look at the months of supply that are on the market, anything that's around 4 to maybe 6 or so months, generally speaking, a lot of real estate experts look at that as a normal or a balanced market or a point of equilibrium. So anything less than that, you're looking at that and considering the market as a seller's market, which means the seller holds the cards, there's less inventory, and the buyers have to basically play the game that the sellers want. Think about COVID. That was a seller's market. Anything over and beyond 6 months or greater, you would consider that a buyer's market. That's where there's a ton of supply on the market, and now you, as the buyer, you get to negotiate with the sellers. But what's really unique about the market that we're in today is that it's a buyer's market simply because of where interest rates are. So interest rates was the catalyst to help a lot of buyers get negotiating power. Why? Because again, a lot of buyers quit looking. Once they saw rates go from the 3s to the 6s in June, July, they gave up. There was nothing that was going to convince that person to go and buy a house. I mean, I literally lost hundreds of clients last year because rates did that and they said, no, I'm not buying. But again, now that they're starting to see this normalization and they feel that 6 or 7% is a little more manageable for whatever reason. Again, I think it's just more of a psychological thing. They are now wanting to buy. So being that this market is very unique with it being a buyer's market, but yet still tight on inventory, it still causes sometimes a bidding war in parts of the country. I've had some clients that were buying here in Las Vegas that there were 4 offers on a house, and the seller would then come back to you as a buyer and say, well, give us your highest and best offer. So that's your last chance to basically go back to the seller and say, here's the terms, here's the price, here's what we're willing to offer, take it or leave it. And again, the seller then gets to decide what offer they really like. So if inventory stays tight, which is what a lot of people are predicting, and you can even look at some of the reports that have come out as far as building permits and even what builders are forecasting, they're not too confident about the market yet. So they're not going to put out a ton of inventory over the next probably 6 to 12 months. So this is also going to be, again, a little tough for the average person to get into the home. And I think this is something that more and more people need to understand, simply because, we all assume that interest rates are going to go down and it's going to just be fine and dandy for every buyer just to go out there. We're going to find a house and it's going to be easy peasy like it was prior to COVID. But I don't hear enough people talking about how tough the market can be or will be simply because of the fact that there's not enough homes out there at the market. I think this is something you really have to pay attention to in your own market so you can get ahead of the craze that will come around if interest rates come down. Nonetheless, with everything that's going on right now in the economy, in the housing market, there are still opportunities for you to win in this market. Now, I know a lot of people might look at this and say, well, you're in the mortgage business. Of course, you want people to buy houses. Yes, we want people to buy houses, but I think the bigger picture is that I believe in housing, and I believe that Wall Street and a lot of these other bigger investors, they are getting into the space, which is making it harder for us, me, as well as you, to be able to buy a house in this market because they have billions of dollars and they're going to buy anything and everything that fits their criteria, which means that's one less house that we have the opportunity to purchase, whether you're an investor like myself or you're simply trying to buy your first home. So with all these big changes that are out there, I think you have to weed through the noise. You have to stop listening to social media. You have to stop listening to what the media tells you, and you really have to talk to an expert who understands what's going on in your market, because those are the people that really know the ins and outs of what's taking place in your market, whether there's an uptick in notice of defaults, which mean that there are more and more people that could be potentially losing their home to foreclosure. But what does that mean? That's opportunity. You might be able to assume their loan to where you could take over the property, and now you've got a house maybe with a 3% interest rate, and you don't have to worry about rates where they are today. There's a lot of creative ways that you can purchase a home where you don't need a ton of money down, or you can utilize a down payment assistance program to help you get into the house. In these types of markets where there's uncertainty And there's very polarizing opposition as far as some people that love real estate, like me. And then you have some people that really hate the market and they're trying to downplay it, despite billionaires and investors alike that are continuously buying single family homes. So in my opinion, if those guys are buying properties, this is something you have to pay attention to. And you can't just turn a blind eye simply because, oh, interest rates are 7%, so I'm going to give up on looking at real estate. No, you can't do that. This is why the rich get rich. They understand how to play the game. Everything that turns away the average person, they go deep on and they understand the mechanics of it. So right now with housing, the average person is scared to do anything because of what they're reading and listening to, while the investors are out there, they're buying, they're making money, they're doing deals. And like I've said before, I have clients that are winning. They bought houses under market value. I have people in my office that are flipping houses that have literally taught the sellers down $50,000, $60,000 off their price. And these guys are making money. So you can hate on it all you want, but when I see people making money every day in this industry, I know that it's possible. And this is why I create these videos, to help you understand what's really going on. Now, if you don't know where to start, you can always hit the description below. There's links to more information. You can send me an email. We can always hop on a private call so I can understand what you're trying to do and help you make that a reality in 2023. I believe in housing. I think it's always going to bounce back no matter what happens, and you can still make money in every single market, no matter what. So if you don't know where to start, send me an email. Let's hop on a call, get a game plan together so you can win in this market too.